And today I rise to contribute to the Drugs, Poisons and Controlled Substances Amendment Authorising Pharmacists Bill 2023. And of course, with this amendment to the current legislation, the government are proposing to establish a 12-month pilot, obviously, of pharmacists prescribing repeat scripts for oral contraception, medication for uncomplicated UTIs, travel medication and minor skin conditions. And Speaker, I stand here again before you telling you about yet another election commitment by the Andrews Labor government, and we're delivering on just another one of our commitments, election commitments. Obviously, mild skin conditions take many shapes, but on average scripts cost around about $25, and that $25 can add up when you add the cost of seeing a GP. And I know recently I went to the GP and it cost me $150 for a consultation, which is quite expensive, but fortunately I can afford it. I get $70 back from Medicare, but not everyone could afford to see a GP and pay $150 on the day and only receive $70 back from Medicare. So the increased cost is an issue for a number of our members of our communities. Obviously, talking about the next bit of the contribution that I'll make is about women and their reproductive cycles, and of course how they manage them. And of course, it's difficult to imagine, I know, but I had a bit of help with this part. And using the figures of Treasury that have been provided, total number of women between 16 and 55, 30% would choose to take the pill. And of that 30%, 50% would rather see a pharmacist rather than repeat scripts. And I think that's an important matter in regard to access and availability for women in regard to obtaining the pill. And of course, we've all seen the demands on our health system and our health professionals, and in particular GPs. And I know that it can be exhausting to get an appointment with a GP in some places, and I know in Melton it's been very difficult for a number of my constituents to get in to see a GP, and even then, as we know, with the Medicare situation, many GPs are no longer bulk billing, which is causing additional pressures on our public health system. So it's, the simple act of getting another prescription can take up to, unnecessary time, not only for the patient but also for the consulting GP. And this bill and this pilot will ease some of the burdens on those primary health carers. Speaker, going to the GP, women have expressed, going with cap in hand to ask for a repeat script for the pill feels invasive, and that it feels unnecessary and intimidating. It can be exclusionary, and in fact they often put it off because it is too expensive in some cases. And as I say, you add the cost of it and then the cost of the consultation, and it can be quite expensive, in particular with the cohort of my constituents. Treasury used the estimate of $15 per PBS script, and that's clearly on an average. That's not so prescriptive, but it's on an average of $15. I do have a staff member in my office that when she was at university, she would spend around about $80 a month on purchasing the pill, and after many years of trying to find a good hormonal balance of the chemicals, the only one that didn't come along with business-stopping side effects had a hefty price tag. So again, it depends on the individual circumstances and physical circumstances also. Of course, with the erosion of bulk billing, as I've already referred to, the cost per year could be upwards of over $1,200 for a 12-month supply, and with a small Medicare rebate, really makes it quite expensive for this medication. Look, there was a time not so far back in the distant history when the pill was only prescribed to married women, and thank God we've progressed from those days, from those dark days. And of course, A UK Labor MP, Edwin Brooks, in 1967, nearly 50 years ago, through a private member's bill, enabled local health authority-funded family health clinics to give contraceptive advice to unmarried women, and on both medical and social grounds. And Edward Brooks actually moved to Australia and now lives in Australia, and his daughter Victoria was a Labor candidate for the seat of Riverina in 2004. Yeah. So I'd like to share with you and the House some information that comes from the authority of the long-running peer-reviewed medical journal, The Lancet, and it was twice recommended non-prescription availability of contraceptive pill, once because of its protective effect against cancer, and another time because it would help women realise how safe it is. And in New Zealand, pharmacists around the world have proven they indeed can manage these supplies without a doctor. And oral contraceptives still require a prescription in most developed countries. But in 2017, New Zealand announced that they would selected combined oral contraceptives with progestogen-only pills were to become available for specially trained pharmacists. So that's since 2017 that New Zealand has had this medication available to women in New Zealand. Of course, throughout the pandemic and since, we've heard stories from Victorians about the guilt that they've felt in taking up a valuable spot in the doctor's waiting room, and also in some cases in waiting outside in their car to be called into the doctor's waiting room. Of course, they feel guilty because they know that there are sicker people that have been trying to get into the doctor. But these people have been waiting outside in the car or waiting in the doctor's waiting room only to go in there to receive a prescription, to be able to go to the pharmacist and pick up some of this medication. And obviously that's caused many concerns. Since 1974, the UK's National Health Service has made the contraceptive pill free and confidential. And in fact, the House may be surprised to learn that the pill has been free in many, many countries, including Russia, since the 1990s. So while our pilot doesn't go that far, it does show us how antiquated it is that we make young women wait to see a GP to get access to a life-prolonging, cancer risk-reducing, and one of the safest and most studied drugs in all of the medical world. So in the States, the rapid decline of human rights because of the erosion of women's rights in the States, and we've seen that recently, and I'd like to thank the Emily's List Australia, who have made incredible progress in this area, and I know there are many women of this chamber and the other place Emily's List members. I did want to make reference to comments made by the member for Lowan in her contribution. She referred to an MOU for the Eden Hope Hospital and Ambulance Victoria using paramedics at the hospital where they were required to assist with patients. And this did happen some years ago, and it probably doesn't happen as much today, and that's probably because of the demand on paramedic workload nowadays. But of course that arrangement was done in all good faith by all of the parties involved, and taking into account the primary issue of the patient's health and welfare. And I think that's really important, that that's what this is about, rather than clogging up the health system and putting exceptional demands on GPs. And I think pharmacists can assist with obviously dispensing of the medications that's been referred to in this bill. In regard to the amendment that the member for Lowan raised, I don't see the need for that amendment because of the fact that I think the pilot program is sufficient. The 12-month pilot is sufficient. I don't think that we need to extend it out to 2 years. There's enough research from around the country and around the world in regard to the access to this medication and allowing pharmacists to do it. And look, finally, my personal opinion is that I think we need to look at scopes of practice of all health professions rather than we've ring-fenced it for so many decades. And if we don't do that, the demand on our health system will just increase and will worsen, and delays will worsen, and access for patients to get better patient care and health care I think is important. So that's only my personal view. that I think we need to look further. And I commend the bill to the House.